The year was 1943, and a quiet tension hung over Wright Field in Dayton, Ohio. As the crew went about their routine tasks, their eyes were suddenly drawn to the sky. A strange aircraft, with a silhouette none of them recognized, approached at a steady pace. Its frame was foreign, its lines sharper than any American plane, and yet it bore U.S. markings. Anti-aircraft gunners stood ready, fingers twitching nervously, unsure whether to open fire or wait. What was this mysterious warbird flying above them? As it drew closer, the plane revealed itself, a captured German Junkers Ju-188, flown by none other than an American crew. The airmen who gathered beneath it couldn't help but be impressed. This was no ordinary bomber. It was a product of Germany's advanced wartime engineering, a symbol of luftwaffe innovation. And yet, it was just a stepping stone in a larger plan, an evolution that would lead to the Ju-388, an aircraft designed to change the course of the air war. The Ju-388, however, would remain a phantom of potential. Conceived in the crucible of war, this remarkable plane was built for high-altitude superiority, designed to evade Allied fighters, and equipped with cutting-edge technology. But despite all of its advancements, it never flew a single combat mission. It was as if fate had grounded it, forever leaving its story unfinished, locked away in the shadow of its predecessors. But how does a warplane, created with such ambition, simply fade into obscurity? How does something designed to challenge the skies vanish from the annals of history, its story overshadowed by the roar of other machines? As we unravel the untold story of the Ju-388, we'll explore the circumstances that birthed this extraordinary aircraft, the technological genius behind it, and the reasons why, despite its potential, it never had its moment in battle. Now, let's delve into the Ju-388's journey, starting with the evolution of its predecessors and how Germany's desperation to maintain air superiority gave rise to one of World War II's most forgotten marvels. The Junker's name was synonymous with Germany's aerial might during World War II. At the heart of the Luftwaffe's bombing campaigns was the Junkers Ju-88, an aircraft that first took flight in 1936. Versatile and reliable, the Ju-88 was a workhorse, serving as a bomber, reconnaissance plane, and even a night fighter. With over 15,000 units produced, it was the backbone of Germany's air force, proving invaluable in both offensive and defensive operations. However, as the war dragged on, the Luftwaffe's need for more advanced aircraft became evident. By 1943, the Ju-188 was introduced as the Ju-88's natural successor. Retaining much of the original structure, the Ju-88 boasted superior speed, better armament, and a heavier payload capacity. Its design featured new engines, enhanced aerodynamics, and improved defensive firepower. On paper, it seemed like the ideal evolution. But while the Ju-88 could outrun its predecessor, it wasn't the game-changer Germany desperately needed. The Allies were rapidly improving their air capabilities, and the Luftwaffe required an even greater leap in performance to compete. That pressure pushed Junkers engineers toward their next ambitious project, the Ju-388. This new aircraft was designed to be faster, fly at higher altitudes, and carry out more specialized roles, from reconnaissance to night fighting. It was seen as a vital tool to regain air superiority, offering the ability to evade enemy fighters by flying where few could follow. The Ju-388 was meant to be the next major leap in German aviation. But as the war wore on, this promise remained unfulfilled. Now, with the Ju-388 poised to take flight, let's explore the engineering breakthroughs that made this aircraft so remarkable, and the obstacles that kept it grounded. The Ju-388 was designed with one primary goal in mind: high-altitude superiority. To achieve this, the engineers at Junkers equipped it with a pressurized cockpit, a cutting-edge feature that allowed the plane to operate at altitudes of over 40,000 feet, well beyond the reach of most Allied fighters. Its minimal armament, just a pair of MG-131 machine guns and a remote-controlled tail turret, was a strategic decision to reduce weight, allowing the aircraft to focus on speed and altitude rather than dogfights. This streamlined design aimed to maximize performance in the thin air of high altitudes, where other bombers struggled to operate. However, the Ju-388 was more than just a modified bomber. It borrowed heavily from its predecessors, the Ju-88 and Ju-188, using the same wings and tail design to simplify production. The landing gear came directly from the Ju-88, but the heart of the Ju-388 lay in its advanced engines, particularly the BMW 801 radial engines, which gave it a top speed of over 380 miles per hour. Despite these impressive advancements, the Ju-38 was a patchwork of past designs, combining parts from earlier models, which earned it the nickname of a Frankenstein plane. The German High Command saw the Ju-388 as a multi-role aircraft capable of reconnaissance, bombing, and night fighting. It was to be Germany's answer to the increasing dominance of Allied bombers and fighters. But the rapid escalation of the war and the crumbling German infrastructure meant that deploying the Ju-388 in large numbers became an impossible task. Despite its advanced design, the war's end came too soon for the Ju-388 to take its place in the skies. Now, let's explore the operational challenges that kept the Ju-388 grounded and the missed opportunities that followed. For all its promise, the Ju-388 never fired a shot in combat. Despite being designed to help Germany regain air superiority, its development came too late, and its full potential was never realized. By the time the Ju-388 was ready for deployment, Germany was facing insurmountable challenges. Resources were running dry, factories were being bombed, and supply chains were collapsing. The once formidable Luftwaffe had dwindled in strength, struggling to keep pace with the Allied forces that now controlled much of the skies over Europe. The Ju-388J variant, intended to be a high-altitude night fighter, is a striking example of missed opportunity. Equipped with advanced radar and a pressurized cabin, this version of the Ju-388 could have been a formidable opponent against Allied bombers, which regularly pounded German cities in the later stages of the war. The Ju-388J was built to fly above enemy formations, using its speed and altitude to evade both defensive fire and enemy fighters. In theory, it was an ideal counter to the increasing number of Allied raids, but it never had a chance to prove itself. By the time it was operational, the Allied bombing campaigns had already crippled Germany's ability to produce and deploy such aircraft in significant numbers. In total, approximately 100 Ju-388s were built, but only a handful were even flight tested. Production was hampered by logistical problems as the war turned against Germany. Factories were destroyed, and skilled workers were in short supply, either conscripted into military service or displaced by the chaos of the war. The remaining resources were redirected to more urgent defense projects, leaving the Ju-388 to languish in hangars, never reaching the front lines. The story of the Ju-3 is not just one of technological advancement, but also of timing. Had it been ready a year earlier, it might have altered the dynamics of aerial combat, at least in certain theaters. Instead, the rapid pace of the war, coupled with Germany's desperate situation, meant that this advanced aircraft never had a chance to make an impact. Its innovative design, pressurized cabins, radar systems, and high-altitude performance remained untested in the heat of battle, a testament to what might have been had the war played out differently. Ultimately, the Ju-388 was a victim of Germany's declining fortunes. The high hopes for its performance were crushed under the weight of a collapsing war machine, and it remains a largely forgotten piece of aviation history, overshadowed by the planes that actually flew and fought in the skies over Europe. The war ended before the Ju-388 could take flight in any meaningful way, leaving behind only a handful of prototypes and test models as evidence of what could have been. Next, we'll explore one of the more curious incidents involving the Ju-188, a precursor to the Ju-388, and how its capture influenced the perception of this would-be giant of the Luftwaffe. In a curious twist of history, the Ju-188, one of the predecessors to the Ju-388, unexpectedly found itself in Allied hands. The story of Bakshish, as it came to be known, began in September 1943, when a disillusioned German pilot flew the bomber straight into an Allied airfield in Cyprus. Tired of the war, the pilot decided to surrender, handing over a nearly brand new Ju-188 to the Royal Air Force. The aircraft had barely clocked 50 hours of flight time, making it a valuable prize for Allied engineers eager to study German aviation technology. After a thorough inspection, the British transferred Bakshish to the U.S. Army Air Forces for further testing. Major Warner E. Newby, a seasoned American test pilot, took the Ju-188 for several test flights and marveled at its capabilities. He praised its innovative design, especially its superior navigational equipment, radio compass, and autopilot systems. However, Newby also described the plane as the heaviest and most vicious airplane he had ever flown, laden with what he called an overwhelming amount of gadgets, a testament to Germany's obsessive focus on technical advancement. Despite its quirks, Bakshish impressed American engineers and demonstrated just how advanced Junkers' designs had become. This experience stoked Allied interest in Junkers' future projects, including the Ju-388. While the Ju-188 had shown great potential in its own right, the Ju-388, with its improvements in speed, altitude, and versatility, became a focus of intrigue. Yet, by the time the war ended, the Allies' opportunity to study the Ju-388's combat performance came too late. The captured Ju-388s were relegated to experimental status, their potential never fully realized. Now, let's delve into the end of the Luftwaffe and how the Ju-388's legacy was ultimately lost in the chaos of Germany's collapse. As the Third Reich crumbled in the final months of World War II, so did its once mighty Luftwaffe. What had once been the terror of European skies was reduced to a ragged, undersupplied force, unable to challenge the overwhelming power of the Allied air offensive. Germany's defeat was inevitable, and with it, many of its ambitious aircraft projects were abandoned. Among these was the Ju-388, a plane designed for high-altitude dominance but left stranded as the war machine that birthed it fell apart. By 1904, the Luftwaffe was a shadow of its former self. Allied bombing campaigns relentlessly targeted Germany's industrial capacity, crippling factories and infrastructure. The resources to produce the Ju-388, from materials to skilled labor, became scarce. Factories that once churned out hundreds of aircraft a month were reduced to rubble, and Germany could no longer afford to mass-produce new designs. Plans to fully integrate the Ju-388 into the Luftwaffe were shelved, leaving only about 100 units built. These aircraft, never deployed in combat, were scattered across various airfields, victims of a war that had outrun them. Yet, despite its lost potential, one Ju-388 found its way into the annals of history. Today, a single surviving Ju-388 resides at the National Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C. This aircraft, serial number 5E60049, was captured by U.S. forces near the end of the war at a German airfield in Merseburg. Shipped to the U.S. aboard the HMS Reaper as part of Operation Seahorse, a mission to capture and evaluate Germany's most advanced war machines. The Ju-388 became part of a collection of captured aircraft intended for study by American engineers. It was brought to Wright Field in Ohio for testing, where it sat alongside other German aircraft, such as the Me-262 jet fighter and the Arado R-234. After its evaluation, the Ju-388 was transferred to the Smithsonian Institution, where it remains today, preserved as a rare relic of a bygone era. Unlike more famous German aircraft like the Messerschmitt Me-262, the Ju-388 never achieved legendary status. But its presence in the museum serves as a testament to the innovative yet ultimately unfulfilled vision of German wartime aviation. When compared to other advanced German projects, the fate of the Ju-388 becomes even more tragic. The Me-262, for example, represented a technological leap as the world's first operational jet fighter, and although it also arrived too late to change the course of the war, it saw combat and left a lasting legacy on aviation history. The Ju-388, on the other hand, was an evolution of proven designs, aiming to outpace Allied bombers and operate in high-altitude environments. Yet, the war's swift conclusion meant that it was never given the chance to prove itself. It was an aircraft with great promise, but ultimately little impact, a contrast to the Me-262's brief but significant role. The Ju-388's story reflects a common theme in the late stages of World War II. Germany's technical prowess overshadowed by its logistical collapse. By the time these advanced aircraft were ready to take flight, the Reich was on its last legs, its factories destroyed, its pilots exhausted, and its ability to innovate thwarted by overwhelming Allied firepower. The Ju-388, despite its impressive design, remains a historical footnote, an aircraft that had the potential to soar but never got the chance. In the end, the Ju-388 symbolizes the lost dreams of a nation in its final desperate months. Its high-altitude capabilities and advanced systems would have been an asset to the Luftwaffe, but like many of Germany's late-war projects, it came too little, too late. Today it sits quietly in a museum, a silent reminder of what might have been, if history had unfolded differently. The Ju-388's failure to see combat was not due to any fault in its design, but rather the overwhelming operational challenges Germany faced in the final stages of World War II. By 1904, the Luftwaffe was crumbling under the weight of Allied bombing raids and crippling shortages. Factories were being destroyed, skilled workers were in short supply, and essential resources like fuel and raw materials were severely depleted. Even if the Ju-388 had been produced in larger numbers, getting it off the ground and into battle would have been a logistical nightmare. One of the biggest challenges was fuel. As Allied forces tightened their grip on Germany's oil supplies through targeted bombings of refineries and fuel depots, aviation fuel became an increasingly scarce commodity. The Luftwaffe, already stretched thin, was forced to prioritize which aircraft would receive what little fuel was available. With jets like the Me-262 taking priority for the dwindling fuel reserves, aircraft like the Ju-388, which were still in the production phase, were pushed to the sidelines. The lack of trained pilots further compounded the problem. By the war's end, Germany had lost many of its most experienced airmen. New recruits were being rushed through training programs that were shortened due to the desperate need for manpower, resulting in a generation of pilots who lacked the skill and experience to handle advanced aircraft, like the Ju-388. This, combined with the increasing effectiveness of Allied air superiority, made it difficult for the Luftwaffe to field even its existing planes, let alone integrate new designs. Strategically, the Ju-388 fell victim to shifting priorities within the German command. As the Allies pushed closer to German borders and the situation grew more dire, the focus shifted from long-term projects to immediate defense needs. The Luftwaffe leadership prioritized interceptors like the Me-262 and anti-aircraft systems in a desperate bid to fend off Allied bombers. This meant that promising multi-role aircraft like the Ju-388 were sidelined, even though their potential could have filled gaps in reconnaissance, night fighting, and high-altitude bombing. The Ju-388's advanced design, while impressive, was simply too late to make a meaningful difference. Germany's resources were stretched too thin, and the war's pace had outstripped the development process. By the time the aircraft was ready for operational deployment, the Luftwaffe was already on the brink of collapse. Plans to mass-produce the Ju-388 were abandoned, and most of the few aircraft that were built never made it out of the testing phase. Despite its technical achievements, the Ju-388 is a forgotten footnote in the history of World War II aviation. It was a plane that held great promise, designed to compete in a new era of high-altitude warfare, yet it never had the opportunity to shine. Overshadowed by other, more immediate needs, it became another casualty of Germany's late-war desperation. Its legacy today is one of unfulfilled potential, a reminder of how quickly even the most advanced technology can be rendered obsolete by the harsh realities of war. The Ju-3 is one of the great what-ifs of World War II aviation. Had Germany had the time and resources to fully deploy it, the Ju-388 could have made a significant impact on the air war. Its ability to fly at high altitudes, evade enemy fighters, and serve in multiple roles, whether as a reconnaissance plane, a night fighter, or a bomber, gave it the potential to challenge Allied air superiority. With its advanced radar systems and pressurized cockpit, it might have outmaneuvered the heavy bombers ravaging German cities. In a world where Germany's war effort hadn't been collapsing, the Ju-388 might have turned the tide in specific battles, or at least prolonged the air war, forcing the Allies to adapt to a new, elusive threat in the skies. Even though it never saw action, the Ju-388 remains a testament to German engineering prowess. It represents the relentless drive for innovation, even in the most desperate of circumstances. The technological features packed into this plane, the high-altitude capabilities, streamlined design, and advanced avionics, were remarkable for their time. In this way, the Ju-388 stands as a symbol of the ingenuity that flourished even in the face of overwhelming adversity. History often remembers the giants that fought, but the Ju-388 is a giant that never had the chance to. It is a symbol of unrealized potential, a plane that might have altered the course of history had the war played out differently. In the quiet halls of the National Air and Space Museum, the Ju-388 sits as a reminder of what could have been, a relic of an aircraft built for battle, but grounded by fate.